World travelers of Reddit, where did you go? That was a total disappointment. Irishman here. Florida was such a disappointing blowout. Here I was, expecting to see a bunch of fat, stupid Americans, and instead, I got a pack of slim, tanned, beautiful hunts. Made me feel so ducking insecure about my scrawny pale Irish face. I was quite surprised at LA. Coming from the UK, I had a preconceived idea which wasn't really met. Sure, there were areas which were glamorous and glitzy, but so much of it wasn't. I don't dislike the city by any means. I just didn't expect the contrast of homeless people sleeping next to stars on the Walk of Fame. Edit, we were only there for 4 days. So yeah, we didn't get a chance to dig deep. We saw San Francisco and Vegas at the same time. So we got in some variety. After 195 cities in 25 countries, I can't say everywhere's disappointing. Purely, if we're talking about places, your palaces, your waterfalls, footpaths along chalky sets of cliffs, any beautiful sight is just that. I'm 28, and if I could give my teenage self one piece of advice, it'd be talk to everyone. No destination is the sum of its sights. Local people carry the souls of places. Duck in Stonehenge. I guess it's alright, as far as henges go. But it's smaller than you think. You can't get close to it, and it's stuck in hours from London, which wouldn't matter if it was worth it. English guy here. Belarus. I've never felt so unwelcome. The police follow you everywhere. My passport was being checked constantly. I just felt like I was being watched wherever I went. Edit, so many of you had such a good time in Belarus, I think I'm going to have to go back and see if it's different. Minsk meetup, anyone? I can't imagine traveling to Belarus with anything but the lowest of expectations. I love traveling and I love exploring all kinds of weird and unusual countries. Some would surprise you. Bosnia and Albania were beautiful countries with lovely people. For example, Belarus just had nothing going for it. I haven't been to many Soviet bloc countries, but I'm hesitant to go anymore at the moment. If you are going to spend the money to go to the Caribbean, do not waste it going to Jamaica. Yes, you can stay on a resort and have the time of your life, but you can do that on any of the islands. Go someplace nicer like Aruba, Cayman Islands, St. Thomas. Bruges. For some reason, my boss sent me there. I was led to believe it was some magical place, with its canals and churches and such. It was supposed to be like something out of a fairy tale. It wasn't. It was shit. Even the racist Majids there had to take drugas to manage. I did end up going on a date with an attractive local, but even that ended up being mostly disappointing. It involved 2 instances of extreme violence. One instance of her hand on my big dig and my finger up her thing, which lasted all too briefly. One instance of me stealing 5 grams of very high quality coke, and one instance of me blinding a puffy little skinhead. At the end of it all, I came to the realization that maybe that's what hell is, the entire rest of eternity spent in Duck in Bruges. Ferguson, Missouri. Now is the time to visit. Hotel rooms are dirt cheap. The stores are practically giving away TVs. And there appears to be some sort of lively street festival going on. Malta. Capital of the Maldives. What a shithole. Rest of the Maldives was incredible. Blackpool, England. I went there for work, and it's always been spoken of as a lovely seaside town, with the illuminations being an incredible spectacle. The town was shit. It was dirty, full of chavs binge drinking on the streets. I got shouted at several times because I had long hair and piercings. I went into a newsagent's to buy a little bit of food, and it was, no word of a lie, 90% alcohol, including test tube shots at the counter. 2/10 would not return to that hole, ever. Tunis in 2010. Ducking hated that place. Wasn't at all surprised when the people revolted like 6 months later. I was like, shit, I'd revolt too. That place sucked. Tokyo. Ha. Just kidding. Tokyo will blow minds for centuries to come. Hopefully. I've been to Iraq twice. Both times it was shitty. Way too hot. Buildings were just falling apart. Trash in the streets. Horrible drivers. Roads had huge potholes in them. And the food provided on the trip sucked us too. The first time I was there the people were pretty nice. Almost dancing in the streets when me and my friends rolled up. The second time, everyone was an asshole. Even the kids threw rocks at us. I would not recommend visiting there. I'm from Holland. And usually travel to Asia. Lived in Hong Kong for a year. So I guess I'm used to these big cities with massively high buildings. Tons of people and awesome food. However, we decided to try the US last year. We went on a trip to Florida and drove in our rental car from Orlando to Miami. Yeah. I don't want to offend anyone so I'll keep it short. People were really nice overall. But it was just not what we expected. Whatsoever. The hardest part for me was not being able to find any nice food anywhere. I don't know if we just did something wrong. But all we saw were miles and miles of highway and homes and no people on the street. It's quite hard to describe. But it was just the feeling of emptiness. A lot of shopping centers. Everyone seemed to be mainly going to those. Which was kind of cool. I mean, I got to see Walmart and the famous fat people in the electric carts. We loved the supermarkets and the shopping stuff but there was just not a lot of anything else. Naples, Italy. The city had piles of trash on the streets. Really near Naples there is a little gem called Sorrento. Beautiful. Paris. Just a complete disappointment. Dubai was shit. An overpriced. Superficial. Fake and unfriendly city. As well. They had no space for my camel. My wife and I really enjoyed Paris. We weren't crowded. Everyone was polite. The food was great. There was history everywhere. The museums were incredible. At 9 AM on a Tuesday edit Wednesday in November. There's no line to see the Mona Lisa. The worst thing was the trophy wife obnoxiously making out with her husband on a river tour. Like, making eye contact with people so we would see her being intoxicated with romance. Gross. Los Angeles. It's just Hollywood and the Walk of Fame and you know. The rest of the place is just not really interesting. San Francisco was great though. Really enjoyed my time there. Hollywood is the absolute worst part of LA. Way too crowded. I prefer the Red Planet. Found the robot spy. If anyone says it's disappointing, they're lying. People come here expecting a rid hole. And that's exactly what they get. Edit, if I knew bad-mouthing my hometown on Reddit would get this kind of reaction, I would have done it a lot sooner. Daytona Beach. FL. Friends somehow convinced me to go a few years ago. Never again will I enter that city of my own free will. It looked like a diseased husk of its former tourist trap self, foreclosed and/or shitty buildings abound. There is literally nothing to do there. Aside from going to the shitty, dilapidated beach and eating at Joe's Crab Shack. No one has said the Leaning Tower of Pisa yet. It is so tiny compared to what you would have expected from pictures. The buildings around it are a lot nicer. It is overall very lame. Agreed. Stopped for 15 minutes. For the obligatory pictures on the way to the airport. Had a bad slice of pizza and got a parking ticket. Will never go back. Germany. Just kidding. That place was ducking awesome. France was full of rude bricks. Though. Especially in Paris. My experience. Germany, oh. You are trying to speak German? That's great. Let's practice together. You speak German and I'll speak English. France, you are trying to speak French? Don't even bother. You stupid American. You sound like a fool. Our language is much too rich for your coarse Yankee tongue. Go back home where you belong. The source of the Nile itself was pretty boring. It's just a bunch of rocks coming from Lake Victoria, Ginger, Uganda. However, the booze cruise and whitewater rafting there were ducking awesome. Uganda itself is underrated. Should have done it Top Gear style. There are plenty of very lovely places in Italy for tourists, such as Trieste or Milan. Venice, however, is a gigantic tourist trap where you have to go off of the main streets to find anything authentic. And the famed canals are horribly polluted and filled with garbage to the point where you wouldn't want to go anywhere near them. It's a very disappointing state of affairs for what was once a very important city. Times Square. It's just a part of a city with a bunch of advertisements that light up. Sure, lights are pretty. It's still dirty and crowded. I guess I'm a nature guy though. Not my cup of tea. I hate to say it, but parts of Paris really pissed me off. It wasn't the stench of body odor on the subway. It wasn't the armed guards in the train station. Hell, it wasn't even an abhorrently rude man in Notre Dame Cathedral, who snapped at me and my then began talking shit about Americans and their entitlement in French when we asked where we had to be in order to climb the steps. I couldn't order a ducking coffee, in English or in French, without a disdainful look from any cafe employee. All I wanted was to give you business and a ducking shot of espresso, not your ducking attitude and your refusal to serve me. I spent some time in the Lyre Valley afterwards, which gave me time to decompress and rationalize my experience. Surrounded by beautiful old cottages and French ponies. But Jesus duck. Parisians can be ducking rude. Egypt. The pyramids were amazing, but the people were unbelievably rude and the cities were the dirtiest I've ever seen. The food was probably the best part and it was just okay. Toronto. CA. Just kidding. Man. Who could hate on that city? It was clean, safe, and I had a blast there. D. Dubrovnik, Croatia. I was there 10 years ago and it was wonderful. I was there just 3 weeks ago and it's become a major tourist trap. The architecture and walking the wall are still pretty great. And it's in a beautiful location. But there are way too many tourists and souvenir shops there now. Darn cruise ships. Anyone that has been backpacking around Europe would have heard of Lake Bled. Don't get me wrong, it is nice, but I heard it was meant to be a must-see site. It was okay, at best. And it was a big detour to get to. Not worth it. Ended up getting drunk in the hostel with a bunch of Australians, which what backpacking around Europe usually is. I'm surprised no one said Las Vegas. I've been twice and while it can be fun, it's really not worth it. The streets are filthy. There are homeless people every 20 or so feet begging. And since you can get alcohol for free, people get really drunk and start fights everywhere. It can be fun. The shows are nice and it's fun in some respects. I just think it's really overrated. Edit. Do Vegas right means something different for everyone. I had fun, it's just not a place I want to visit every year. Stop telling me I spent my time there wrong.